The call came on a Sunday evening, rain tapping softly against the window of my home office in Portland's Pearl District. I was finishing up some design work when my phone lit up with the family group chat notification. Video call in 5 minutes, everyone. Big news. Diane's message, punctuated with 3 exclamation marks and a champagne emoji. I should have known then. Should have felt it in my gut, that particular weight that settles when something is about to go wrong. But I didn't. After 15 years of marriage to Graham, after countless family dinners and holidays and careful navigation of Porter family dynamics, I'd learned to ignore that instinct. I'd learned to smile and show up and assume the best, even when the best rarely showed up for me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Graham was already downstairs, probably pouring himself a scotch. Sunday evening calls with his mother were routine. She liked having her sons within reach even digitally. Marcus would dial in from Seattle, where he managed the northern branch of Porter Development Group. Vanessa would appear with perfect lighting and her children conveniently napping in the background, her lifestyle blog aesthetic bleeding into every family interaction. And me, I'd be there too, the daughter-in-law who'd been part of the fabric for 15 years but never quite woven into the center of the pattern. I closed my laptop and tied my hair back. Checked my reflection in the darkened window. Presentable enough. The video call connected and there they were, arranged like a gallery of portraits. Diane and Richard sat together on their leather couch in Lake Oswego, the kind of studied casual that comes from old money and careful maintenance. Marcus appeared in his crisp white shirt, Seattle skyline visible behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows. Vanessa had her ring light positioned perfectly, her smile bright and expectant. Graham joined from downstairs, settling into his usual chair with that slight distance he always maintained during family calls, as if he were observing rather than participating. Diane's voice filled my speakers, warm and sugary in that way that always made me brace for impact. "Natalie, sweetheart, we're so glad you could join us." I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Richard adjusted his glasses, nodding in that vague way he had, neither agreeing nor disagreeing with anything, just existing in the frame. Diane continued, her hands clasped together like she was about to reveal a lottery win. "We've been planning something absolutely wonderful, and we wanted to share it with the whole family at once." My screen showed everyone leaning in slightly. Even Marcus looked interested, which was rare. Diane's excitement was palpable, radiating through the digital connection. "You know how Richard and I have always dreamed of taking the family to Italy? A real proper family trip. All of us together?" Vanessa actually squealed. "Oh my God, Mom, are we really doing this?" Diane beamed. "We are. I've found the most incredible villa in Tuscany. Chianti region, 1,800 square foot restored farmhouse, pool, vineyard views, the works. 2 weeks in late September. Harvest season." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Villa Serena. She was talking about Villa Serena, the reservation I'd made 18 months ago. The one I'd spent hours researching, comparing properties, reading reviews in Italian that I'd run through translation software to make sure every detail was perfect. The €15,000 deposit I'd paid from my own account, my anniversary gift to Graham, my olive branch to a family that had never quite let me in. I opened my mouth to speak, but Diane was already scrolling through photos on her phone, holding it up to the camera. "Look at this terrace. And the kitchen, oh the kitchen. We can all cook together, have long dinners under the stars." Vanessa was already talking about what she'd pack, what content she'd create. "Tom's going to lose his mind. The kids have never been to Europe." Marcus asked about dates, about logistics. Richard mentioned something about villa wineries and tours he'd researched. And Graham, my husband of 15 years, sat there nodding, smiling that small smile he reserved for family moments he didn't want to fully engage with but couldn't avoid. I waited for him to say something, to mention that his wife had arranged this, that I'd been planning this trip for over a year, that the confirmation emails were in my inbox, the payment receipts filed in my carefully organized digital folders. He said nothing. Diane continued. "Now I know this is a big trip, so we've been thinking carefully about the arrangements. The villa sleeps 12 comfortably, and we want to make sure everyone has space and feels included." My heart started beating faster. Included. That word. The one that always preceded exclusion in my experience with the Porters. So she went on, her tone shifting to something more delicate, almost apologetic but not quite. We've decided to invite Tom's parents as well, Barbara and Jim. They've never been to Europe, and Vanessa thought it would be wonderful for the kids to have both sets of grandparents there. The silence that followed felt enormous. Vanessa jumped in quickly, her voice pitched high with enthusiasm. They're so excited, Nat. And honestly, with the kids, having extra hands will be so helpful. Plus, you know how you are. You're always working, always on deadlines. We figured you'd probably want to stay back anyway, maybe use the time to catch up on projects. I stared at the screen, at Vanessa's perfectly lit face, at Diane's expectant expression, at Richard's vague nodding, at Marcus, who'd already checked out of the conversation, scrolling on his phone, at Graham, who was looking somewhere off camera, his jaw tight in that way that meant he knew exactly what was happening and had chosen his side long before this call began. The villa sleeps 12. There were already 12 people on the guest list, and I wasn't one of them. Diane, Richard, Marcus, Graham, Vanessa, Tom, Lily, Max, and now Barbara and Jim. 12. The exact capacity. I'd been erased from a trip I'd planned and paid for, replaced by my sister-in-law's in-laws, and they were telling me about it like it was a done deal. Like I should be grateful for the consideration of being informed. Diane's voice softened further, dipping into that maternal tone she used when she wanted to seem caring. We knew you'd understand, sweetheart. You're always so reasonable. And besides, this is really a Porter family trip. You know how important family is to us. A Porter family trip. After 15 years of marriage. After 15 years of showing up to every birthday, every holiday, every Sunday dinner. After organizing Diane's 70th birthday party, helping Marcus move twice, watching Vanessa's kids every time she needed a break for her blog content. After folding myself into the shape they needed, smaller and quieter and always available. I wasn't family. I was staff. Before I could find words, before I could process the full weight of what was happening, Vanessa spoke again. Oh, and Nat, we'll need you to transfer the booking information. Mom said you have some travel planning experience, so maybe you can help us sort out the details? Confirmation numbers, payment schedules, all that stuff. You're so good at organizing. They didn't know. They genuinely didn't know that I'd booked Villa Serena. That my name was on the reservation. That I'd paid the deposit. That the final payment of €22,000 was due in 60 days. And without my authorization, they couldn't access any of it. Diane had somehow found the same villa, probably through her own research, not realizing it was already reserved. Not realizing her daughter-in-law had been planning this exact trip as a gift. Not realizing because no one had ever asked me what I was planning. No one had ever thought to include me in the conversation. I looked at Graham. Really looked at him. Waited for him to say something. Anything. His eyes met mine for a brief second, then slid away. He took a sip of his scotch. The silence stretched. Fine, I heard myself say. The word came out steady, almost cheerful. I'll help with the details. Diane clapped her hands together. Oh, wonderful. I knew preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We could count on you. You're always such a team player, Natalie. The call wrapped up quickly after that. Vanessa went on about packing lists and itineraries. Marcus asked about expense splitting. Richard mentioned something about travel insurance. Diane reminded everyone to check their passports. And then, with a chorus of goodnights and see you soons, the screens went dark. I sat in my office, rain still tapping against the window, and stared at the blank monitor. Downstairs I heard Graham moving around. The clink of glass. The opening of the refrigerator. The sound of someone who had nothing to say and no intention of coming upstairs to check on me. I opened my laptop, pulled up my email, found the confirmation from Signora Benedetta Rossi, the rental agent in Florence. Reservation for Villa Serena, Chianti region. Guest name Natalie Porter. Deposit paid in full. Final balance due September 1st. I scrolled down to the terms and conditions. Non-transferable without written consent of the primary guest. Any changes to the reservation require authorization from the account holder. Cancellations made within 90 days of arrival result in forfeiture of deposit and additional penalties. I sat back in my chair. Outside, Portland glittered in the rain, the city lights blurred and soft. Somewhere in that beautiful, indifferent sprawl, my husband was finishing his drink. His family was already planning what to pack, what tours to take, what photographs to stage. They were dreaming of Tuscany, of golden light and ancient olive groves and long tables laden with local wine. They were dreaming of a trip I'd made possible, from which I'd been carefully, deliberately removed. And they had no idea that without me, none of it would happen. The Memorial Day weekend invitation came 3 days after the video call. Casual, easy, the way all Porter family gatherings were framed. Annual reunion barbecue at the Lake Oswego house. Bring your appetite and sunscreen. Diane signed off with a heart emoji and a reminder that she'd been experimenting with a new pasta salad recipe. I almost didn't go. Sat in my car in the driveway for a full 10 minutes, keys in my lap, staring at the Craftsman house with its perfectly maintained lawn and blooming rhododendrons. Graham had driven separately, left early to help his father set up the grill. You don't mind, right? He'd said that morning, already halfway out the door. I'll see you there. I minded. I minded everything. But I went anyway because that's what I did. I showed up. The backyard was already full when I arrived. Marcus and his girlfriend, a rotating cast of polished women who never lasted more than a few months. Vanessa and Tom wrangling Lily and Max, who were running through the sprinkler in swimsuits despite the overcast sky. Richard manning the grill with the focused intensity of a man who treated barbecuing like a surgical procedure. Diane holding court on the patio, surrounded by neighbors and family friends, her laughter carrying across the yard. And Graham, standing with a beer in hand near the fence, talking to his brother about market trends and property values. He didn't look up when I walked through the side gate, didn't wave or smile or acknowledge my arrival in any way. I set the store-bought cookies I'd grabbed on my way over onto the dessert table. Diane swept over immediately, cheek kissing the air near my face. Natalie, darling. So glad you made it. She glanced at the cookies. Oh, you didn't have to bring anything. You're always so thoughtful. The afternoon unfolded in the usual patterns. Small talk and past plates. Kids shrieking. The smell of charcoal and lighter fluid. I floated through it, nodding and smiling, refilling drinks and clearing paper plates. The role I perfected over 15 years. Helpful but invisible. Present but not central. At some point, Diane clinked a glass and called everyone to gather on the patio. We have some exciting updates to share about the Italy trip. My stomach dropped. Graham finally looked at me then, just a glance, and something in his face told me he knew what was coming. Knew and had said nothing. Diane pulled out her phone, swiping through photos she'd saved. We've finalized all the details for Villa Serena. It's going to be the trip of a lifetime. She went through the itinerary she'd drafted. Day trips to Siena and Florence. Wine tastings. Cooking classes. A private tour of a vineyard owned by a family friend of Richard's colleague. Then she got to the guest list. Richard and I, of course. Marcus, you're in the blue room. Graham and Vanessa, you'll have the suites on the second floor. Lily and Max in the twin room. And we're so thrilled that Barbara and Jim can join us. They'll take the garden cottage. She looked up, beaming. It's going to be perfect. All of us together. I waited for someone to notice, to ask, to say, wait, what about Natalie? No one did. Vanessa was already gushing about the cooking classes. Marcus was asking about the wine cellar. Tom was showing Barbara and Jim, who'd apparently been invited to the barbecue specifically for this announcement, photos of the villa on his phone. And Graham, my husband, the man I'd been married to for 15 years, stood there silently finishing his beer. I don't think I'm on that list, I said. My voice came out quieter than I'd intended, but clear enough. The patio went silent. Diane blinked at me, her smile frozen in place. Oh, sweetheart. We talked about this on the call, remember? This is really a Porter family trip, and with Barbara and Jim coming, we're at capacity. But I booked the villa. The words hung in the air. Diane's smile faltered. What? I booked Villa Serena. 18 months ago. It's in my name. I paid the deposit. The silence that followed was different now. Heavier. Diane glanced at Richard, who looked confused. Graham set his beer down on the patio table, his face carefully blank. Vanessa let out a strange little laugh. Wait, what are you talking about? I pulled out my phone. Opened my email. Held it up so they could see the confirmation from Signora Rossi. Reservation for Villa Serena, September 20th through October 4th. Primary guest, Natalie Porter. Deposit €15,000. Paid in full March 15th, 2 years prior. Diane's face went through several expressions at once. Confusion, disbelief, something that might have been embarrassment if she were capable of it. That's impossible. I found that villa myself. I've been coordinating with the rental agency. You found a villa that was already reserved, I said. Reserved by me. As an anniversary gift for the family. Graham finally spoke. Nat, let's not do this here. Do what? Tell the truth? He stepped closer, his voice low. You're making this awkward. I stared at him. I'm making this awkward? They erased me from a trip I planned and paid for. They invited strangers to take my place. And I'm the one making it awkward? Vanessa cut in, her tone sharp. Barbara and Jim aren't strangers. They're family. And honestly, Natalie, if you wanted to be included, maybe you should have said something sooner instead of springing this on everyone. I looked around the patio. At the faces staring back at me. Some uncomfortable. Some annoyed. Some, like Diane's, already rearranging the narrative to make me the problem. Marcus was checking his phone. Richard had gone back to the grill. And Graham wouldn't meet my eyes. How much was the deposit? Diane asked suddenly, her voice taking on a business-like tone. €15,000, I said. She nodded. We'll reimburse you, of course. And you can transfer the reservation to my name. Just send me whatever documentation you need me to sign. I felt something cold and clarifying wash over me. No. Diane blinked. I'm sorry? I'm not transferring the reservation. And I'm not paying the final balance. The patio erupted. Vanessa started talking over Barbara, who was whispering urgently to Jim. Marcus finally looked up from his phone, frowning. Richard abandoned the grill entirely. And Diane, her composure cracking, said, Natalie, be reasonable. The trip is in 2 months. We've made plans. So had I. Diane's voice turned cold. If you're upset about not being included, we can discuss adding you back to the guest list. We'll figure out the sleeping arrangements. It's fine, Vanessa said quickly, though her tone suggested it was anything but. Nat can take the couch in the living room. It's really comfortable. I looked at Graham. He was staring at the ground. This was the moment he could step up. Defend me. Acknowledge what his family had done. Tell them that his wife, his partner of 15 years, deserved better than a couch in a villa she'd booked. He said nothing. I put my phone back in my pocket. Picked up my purse from the patio chair. I hope you all have a wonderful Memorial Day. And I walked out. Through the side gate. Past the perfect lawn and blooming flowers. Got in my car and drove away while behind me, I could hear Diane's voice rising, shrill and indignant, saying something about dramatics and overreactions and ungratefulness. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. I drove home through the Sunday evening traffic, Portland stretching out around me in all its green, rain-washed beauty, and felt nothing but clarity. They'd made their choice. Now I'd make mine. Part 2. The investment and preparation phase. The apartment felt different when I returned from Lake Oswego that evening. Not smaller or larger, just exposed somehow, like I was seeing it clearly for the first time in years. The furniture Graham and I had chosen together. The wedding photos in brushed nickel frames. The kitchen table where we'd eaten thousands of meals, most of them in comfortable silence that I'd mistaken for contentment. I walked through each room slowly, cataloging what was mine and what was ours and what had always belonged to the life I thought I was building. In my office, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dimming light, and I pulled up a folder I'd created 2 years ago. Tuscany trip. Inside were dozens of files. Spreadsheets comparing villa rentals. Saved articles about the best time to visit Chianti. Restaurant recommendations organized by region. A detailed itinerary I'd spent weeks perfecting, balancing cultural sites with relaxation, accounting for the kids' attention spans and Diane's preference for guided tours. I'd even made a backup list of activities in case of rain. I'd imagined presenting this to the family. Imagined their faces when they realized how much thought I'd put into it. How I'd considered everyone's preferences. Planned something that would bring us together. I'd pictured Graham's hand in mine as we walked through Tuscan hillsides. Pictured Diane finally seeing me as part of the family, not just an accessory to her son. Pictured Vanessa maybe, possibly, treating me like a sister instead of an inconvenient audience member to her performed life. I'd been so stupidly hopeful. The email from Signor Rossi was dated March 15th, nearly 18 months ago. I remembered that day clearly. It had been a cold, bright morning in Portland. I'd been sitting in this exact chair drinking coffee when I finally found Villa Serena after weeks of searching. The photos had taken my breath away. Stone walls and terracotta roofs. Olive trees marching down hillsides in perfect rows. A pool that caught the sunset like liquid gold. The description promised tranquility, authenticity, the kind of beauty that Italy held in its bones. I'd called the rental agency immediately, despite the early hour, catching Signora Rossi just as she was opening her office in Florence. She'd been warm and efficient, her English colored by a melodic accent. Villa Serena is very special, she'd said. Very popular. You are lucky it is available for your dates. I'd asked about the deposit, about cancellation policies, about every detail I could think of. Then I'd given her my credit card information and held my breath as the charge went through. 15,000 euros. The largest single purchase I'd ever made without consulting Graham. I justified it as an investment in family, in connection, in building something that transcended the polite distance the Porters maintained with me. An investment that had just been cancelled without my consent. I pulled up my banking records next. Not just the villa deposit but everything. Years of transactions spread across multiple accounts. The family emergency fund I'd set up. Contributions to Vanessa's children's education accounts. The loan I'd given Marcus when his Seattle condo purchase fell through. And he needed to bridge a gap before his mortgage came through. $5,000 I'd never mentioned again, that he'd never offered to repay. The new roof for Diane and Richard's house, because the insurance didn't cover it all and they'd been so stressed. I'd written that check 2 Christmases ago. $8,000. They'd thanked me with a fruit basket. Graham's business expenses that somehow ended up on my credit cards. Client dinners I'd funded. New suits for important meetings. The down payment assistance for the investment property he'd bought with his father, because the bank required more capital than they'd anticipated and asking me was easier than restructuring the deal. That one had been $23,000. He'd promised to pay me back when the property sold. It sold 14 months ago. I'd never seen a penny. I opened a spreadsheet and started documenting everything. Each transaction. Each favor. Each quiet rescue that had been absorbed into the family narrative as simply what Natalie does. The numbers climbed steadily. 1,000 here. 5,000 there. The occasional $20,000 emergency. Over 15 years the total was staggering. $68,000. I stared at the number at the bottom of the spreadsheet. $68,000 I'd given to the Porter family in various forms over the course of my marriage. Money that had flowed out of my accounts and into theirs, smoothing over their rough patches, funding their upgrades, enabling their comfort. Money I'd earned from my own career, my own late nights and tight deadlines and successful projects. Money I'd handed over because that's what family did. That's what I'd believed anyway. That loving people meant catching them when they fell. That being reliable meant always having resources available. That marriage meant your money was their money, even if it never seemed to work in reverse. I thought about the conversation I'd had with Graham 3 years ago, when I'd suggested combining our finances completely. Joint accounts. Shared budgeting. True financial partnership. He'd been uncomfortable with the idea. Said he liked keeping things separate, that it was cleaner that way. Less complicated. I hadn't pushed. I'd assumed it was about independence, about maintaining autonomy. Now I wondered if it had been about something else entirely. About keeping my resources available without having to account for how his family was using them. The rain had started again outside. A soft patter against the windows that usually soothed me. Tonight it felt like static. Like the universe's background noise while my entire understanding of my life shifted. I pulled up my email and searched for every exchange I'd had with Graham's family over the years. Birthday reminders I'd sent him. Thank you notes I'd written on his behalf. Gifts I'd purchased and wrapped and shipped, always signed from both of us. Arrangements I'd made, problems I'd solved, logistics I'd handled. I was the invisible infrastructure of Graham's family relationships. The unseen labor that kept everything running smoothly. There was the time I'd spent an entire weekend helping Vanessa move into her new house while Graham played golf with Marcus. The months I'd watched Lily and Max every Thursday so Vanessa could attend a blogging workshop. The countless dinners I'd hosted, cleaning for days beforehand, cooking elaborate meals, playing the gracious hostess while Graham sat at the head of the table accepting compliments for food he hadn't cooked. The birthday parties I'd organized for Diane, complete with personalized decorations and catered menus and photo montages that took me weeks to compile. The Father's Day gifts I'd researched and purchased and wrapped for Richard, year after year, while Graham signed the cards. I told myself it was love, that this was what it meant to be part of a family, that my effort would eventually be recognized, appreciated, reciprocated, that I was building something, investing in relationships that would sustain me, that one day they'd see me, really see me, not as Graham's wife or the person who handled things but as Natalie, as someone who mattered in her own right. The Memorial Day barbecue had made the truth undeniable. I was never going to be family to them. I was a resource, useful when needed, invisible when not. And now, having finally spoken up, having finally asserted myself, I was an inconvenience. I closed my laptop and walked to the window. Portland stretched out below, lights flickering on as evening deepened into night. Somewhere out there, Graham was probably still at his parents' house. Probably dealing with the fallout of my departure. Probably being reassured by his mother that I was overreacting, being dramatic, being unreasonable. Probably nodding along, agreeing that I'd made things awkward. Probably not defending me. Not now. Not ever. My phone buzzed. A text from Graham. We need to talk about this. Not an apology. Not concern for how I was feeling. Just a statement of need. His need. I turned my phone face down and didn't respond. The apartment was quiet except for the rain and the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. For 15 years I'd shaped my life around the Porters, around Graham's career and his family's expectations and the unspoken rules of how a wife should behave in their world. Accommodating, supportive, endlessly flexible. I convinced myself that this was partnership. That compromise meant I compromised and he stayed exactly as he was. That love meant I changed shape and he remained solid. I walked to the bedroom and stood in front of our closet. His side and my side. His clothes expensive and carefully maintained. Mine practical and chosen for durability. His dress shirts alone probably cost more than my entire work wardrobe. But I was the one who'd paid for the roof. For Marcus's loan. For the business expenses and the gifts and the emergencies that somehow always required my money but never warranted his family's gratitude. I pulled out my suitcase from the top shelf, set it on the bed, stared at it for a long moment. Then I opened it and started packing. Not everything. Just enough. Just what I'd need. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Graham. Nat, come on. Don't be like this. Be like what? I thought. Self-respecting? Aware of my own worth? Unwilling to accept being erased? I added the text to the growing list of things I wouldn't respond to. In the bathroom I gathered my toiletries, face wash and moisturizer and the expensive serum I'd splurged on last month, the lipstick I never wore but kept meaning to, the hair ties scattered across the counter. Graham's side of the bathroom was cluttered with his things, cologne and razor and the prescription cream for his eczema that I'd always remembered to refill. I wondered if he even knew the name of his own medication. Wondered if he'd remember to call the pharmacy. Wondered if it mattered. Back in the bedroom I folded clothes methodically. Jeans and sweaters and the comfortable dresses I wore for video calls. My favorite cardigan. The boots I'd bought in a moment of optimism last fall. Underwear and socks. A jacket for cool evenings. I wasn't sure where I was going yet. Just away. Just somewhere that wasn't here. Somewhere the air wasn't thick with 15 years of unreciprocated effort. I added my laptop and chargers. My notebooks. The small leather journal I'd been meaning to write in but never found time for. A framed photo of my parents, both gone now, who would have been horrified to see how small I'd made myself. The suitcase wasn't even full when I finished. Somehow that felt right. Leaving room for whatever came next. My phone rang. Graham this time, not texting. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later another call. Then another. I turned the sound off completely. In the kitchen I made tea. Chamomile because it was late and I needed to think clearly. I sat at the table with my laptop open again, the spreadsheet still displayed. $68,000. A number that represented so much more than money. Time and energy and emotional labor. Years of making myself useful because I believed that usefulness would eventually translate into belonging. The tea grew cold while I stared at the numbers. Then I opened a new browser window and started searching. Cities I'd never been to. Places where no one knew me. Where I had no history, no obligations, no role to perform. Portland had been Graham's choice. We'd moved here for his career. For proximity to his family. I'd adapted, found remote work. Built a life that orbited his. What would I choose if the choice were only mine? I typed in Asheville, North Carolina. Read about mountains and artists and a river that ran through the city's heart. Looked at rental listings. Modest apartments in converted buildings. Neighborhoods with coffee shops and bookstores and farmers markets. A place that felt far enough away to be free but small enough to disappear into. I favorited several listings. Made notes. Started calculating what I'd need for a deposit, for moving expenses, for starting over. The numbers were manageable. I'd always been careful with money. Even while funding the Porter family's various needs, I'd maintained my own savings. Money they didn't know about. Money that was purely mine. It was after midnight when Graham finally came home. I heard his car in the driveway, the front door opening, his footsteps in the hallway. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, loosened tie and exhausted expression. His eyes went to my suitcase, visible through the bedroom door. "Natalie, what are you doing?" "Thinking," I said. He moved into the kitchen, poured himself water. "We need to talk about what happened today. You embarrassed my mother." I set my teacup down carefully. "I embarrassed your mother?" She announced a trip I planned and paid for. A trip I've been removed from. And I'm the one who should be embarrassed? That's not how it happened. Then tell me how it happened, Graham. Explain it to me. He rubbed his face, a gesture of fatigue I'd seen 1,000 times. "Mom didn't know you booked the villa. It was an honest mistake. She found the same property. These things happen. And when she found out I'd already reserved it, that I'd paid a €15,000 deposit? What then?" He was quiet. "She offered to reimburse you," he finally said. "To add you back to the guest list. That's reasonable." Reasonable would have been including me from the beginning. Reasonable would have been asking if I had plans before making your own. Reasonable would have been you, my husband, saying something when they announced I'd been replaced by Vanessa's in-laws. He flinched slightly. I didn't know what to say. It all happened so fast. It didn't happen fast. It happened over weeks. Your mother planned this entire trip. Made a guest list. Sent invitations. Coordinated with everyone involved. At what point in that process did you think to mention me? He set his water glass down. "Look, I know you're upset. But you're blowing this out of proportion. It's just a trip." "Just a trip," I repeated. "Just a trip I spent 18 months planning. Just €15,000 I paid from my own account. Just another example of me being erased while your family takes what I've built. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time your family thanked me for anything? When was the last time you noticed what I do for them?" Graham's jaw tightened. "You're choosing a hell of a time to keep score." I opened my laptop, turned it toward him. The spreadsheet glowed between us. "I'm not keeping score. I'm adding it up." He stared at the numbers. His face went through several expressions. Confusion. Understanding. Something that might have been shame. "Nat, I didn't ask you to do any of this. You didn't have to ask. Your family expected it. And you let them. You let your mother call me at midnight when their water heater broke. You let Marcus borrow money he never repaid. You let Vanessa treat me like free childcare. You let them take and take and take, and you never once stopped to ask if I was okay with it. Because it was easier. Because saying yes to them meant you didn't have to deal with conflict. And I paid the price." He was quiet for a long time. Then softly, "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to see what's happening. I want you to acknowledge that your family has treated me like I'm disposable. I want you to stand up for me. For us." He looked away. "They're my family, Nat. They are. And so am I. I'm your wife. Or at least I thought I was." His eyes met mine, something broken in them. What does that mean? It means I'm tired of being invisible. It means I'm tired of funding your family's life while being excluded from it. It means I'm not transferring the villa reservation, and I'm not paying the final balance, and I'm not pretending anymore that everything is fine. Graham straightened. You're seriously going to sabotage the trip? I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm simply declining to pay for a vacation I'm not invited to. That's petty, is it? Would you pay 22,000 euros for a trip you're not welcome on? He didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, filled with all the things we'd never said, all the times I'd swallowed my hurt, all the moments he'd chosen them over me. Finally he spoke. I'll talk to my mother. We'll figure something out. You do that, I said. And while you're figuring it out, I'll be figuring out what I'm going to do next. What does that mean? It means I need space. It means I need to think about whether this marriage is something I want to keep investing in. Natalie, he said, and there was panic in his voice now. Don't do this. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. But it is big, Graham. It's 15 years big. It's $68,000 big. It's my entire life shaped around people who don't see me. That's big. I'm not leaving you. I'm just taking a break. To figure out what I want. What I deserve. He started to say something, stopped. Started again. How long? I don't know. As long as it takes. I stood, picked up my teacup, rinsed it in the sink. My movements were calm, deliberate. I'd expected to feel more emotional. Instead, I felt clear. Certain. The path ahead was visible for the first time in years. Graham watched me walk toward the bedroom. Watched me zip my suitcase closed. Watched me gather my laptop bag and keys. Where are you going? Away. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. He followed me to the front door. We can work this out. We can talk to someone. A counselor or something. Maybe, I said. But not tonight. Not while I'm this angry. Not while you still don't understand what you've allowed to happen. I opened the door. The night air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of rain and earth. Natalie, please. I looked at him. At this man I'd spent 15 years loving. This man who'd stood silent while his family erased me. This man who'd benefited from my generosity and never thought to question the cost. I love you, he said. I know, I replied. I'm just not sure that's enough anymore. And I walked out, pulling my suitcase behind me, leaving Graham standing in the doorway of a home that had never quite felt like mine. I drove to a hotel downtown. Nothing fancy, just clean and anonymous. The kind of place where no one asked questions and the Wi-Fi was strong. I checked in under my own name, paid with my own card, and rode the elevator to the 4th floor. The room was generic. Beige walls and industrial carpet and art that wasn't art. Just color arranged inoffensively. I set my suitcase by the closet and sat on the edge of the bed. My phone showed 17 missed calls. Texts from Graham. A voicemail from Diane. Messages in the family group chat I was somehow still part of. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I pulled up the rental listings I'd saved earlier. Asheville apartments with mountain views and reasonable rent. A life I could afford on my own. A place where I could be Natalie, not Graham's wife, not the Porter family problem solver, not the woman who said yes when she should have said no. I filled out an application for a loft in the River Arts District. 3rd floor, exposed brick, windows overlooking the French Broad River. Available immediately. I attached my proof of income, my references from previous landlords, my credit report that showed someone responsible and stable. Someone who paid her bills on time and kept her promises. Someone who deserved better than she'd gotten. The application submitted with a soft ping. Then I opened my laptop and began transferring money. Not all of it. Just enough to make a point. The family emergency fund that somehow only funded Porter family emergencies. I moved it to a new account. One only I could access. The shared vacation fund we'd been building. Gone. Into my personal savings. Every joint account or shared resource I quietly withdrew from. I changed my direct deposit information, routing my paycheck to a new bank entirely. One Graham didn't know about. One his family couldn't find. One that represented my work, my value, my future that belonged only to me. I removed Diane and Richard from my emergency contacts. Removed Vanessa and Marcus. Changed passwords on accounts they'd had access to. The Netflix subscription I paid for. The Costco membership in my name. The AAA card that had bailed Graham out more times than I could count. All of it severed. Reclaimed. By 3 in the morning, I'd systematically disconnected myself from the Porter family infrastructure. Felt like surgery. Precise and necessary and painful in a way that promised healing. My phone buzzed. Another message from Graham. This time I read it. I told my mom what you said. She's very hurt. She wants to apologize. I stared at the words. Diane wanted to apologize. Not because she'd done something wrong, but because I'd made it impossible to ignore. Because I held something she wanted. The villa. The dream trip. The Tuscan fantasy she'd been planning in her mind. I typed back careful and clear. Tell your mother that I appreciate the thought. But I'm not ready to talk yet. And the villa reservation is not up for discussion. His response came quickly. Nat, be reasonable. They've been planning this for months. I replied. So had I. For longer. And I was removed without a thought. Now they can plan something else. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. You're really going to do this? Hold the trip hostage? I'm not holding anything hostage. I'm simply not paying for a vacation I'm not welcome on. That's my right. The dots stopped. No response came. I set my phone on the nightstand and turned out the light. In the darkness, I could hear the city beyond the window. Cars and sirens and the ambient hum of people living their lives. I wasn't sad. I wasn't scared. I was awake. Finally, completely awake. Part 3. The precipice moment morning came with weak sunlight filtering through the hotel curtains. I'd barely slept, but I didn't feel tired. I felt alert, my body humming with a strange energy that had nothing to do with rest and everything to do with clarity. The kind of clarity that comes after years of fog. I ordered room service. Coffee and scrambled eggs and fruit I didn't taste. Checked my email while eating mechanically. The apartment application in Asheville had received an automated response. They'd review it within 48 hours. I flagged it, made a note to follow up. Opened my work calendar and began declining meetings that conflicted with my new priority. Leaving. My phone had been quiet since Graham's last text at 3 in the morning. Now at 8 it started buzzing. Diane's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring through to voicemail. She called again immediately. Then a third time. On the 4th call I answered. Natalie, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. I heard the tightness in her voice. The strain of someone trying to maintain composure. Good morning, Diane. I need to speak with you about this misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. I understand perfectly. She inhaled sharply. I apologize if you felt excluded from the Italy plans. That was never our intention. We simply thought, given your work schedule, that you'd prefer to stay behind. My work schedule has never prevented me from traveling before. When did you ask me about my availability? She paused. I suppose we should have checked with you first. Suppose. I let the word hang there. Diane continued, her voice taking on that tone I knew well. The one she used when she was about to ask for something she considered already granted. The thing is, darling, we've made commitments now. Barbara and Jim have booked their flights. The children are so excited. We've planned activities. You understand how difficult it would be to change everything at this point. I do understand. It's difficult to rearrange plans last minute. Like it would have been difficult for me to rearrange 18 months of preparation. Natalie, please. Be reasonable. I'm being completely reasonable. I'm not paying for a trip I'm not invited to. We've already discussed adding you to the guest list. You can absolutely come. The villa sleeps 12. We'll make it work. On the couch, I said. In the living room. While everyone else has bedrooms. While Barbara and Jim, people I've met twice, sleep in the garden cottage. She was quiet for a moment. We could rearrange the sleeping assignments. Vanessa and Tom could share with the children. You and Graham could have their suite. You're missing the point. The point isn't the sleeping arrangements. The point is that I was never considered. I planned this trip as a gift for this family. I put in months of work. I paid a significant deposit. And I was removed from it without a conversation. Without acknowledgement. Without basic respect. I appreciate all you've done, she said carefully. And I'm sorry you feel hurt. But you have to understand, this trip is very important to Richard and me. We're not getting any younger. We want to create memories with our family while we still can. I am family. Or I thought I was. Of course you're family. You're Graham's wife. Then why am I treated like an employee? Why is it always my money but your family? Why do I fund the emergencies and organize the parties and do the emotional labor, but when it matters I'm the first one cut? That's not fair. You're exaggerating. Am I? Let me ask you something, Diane. When was the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for something. Not because you needed help. Just because you wanted to know how I was doing. She didn't answer. That's what I thought. The silence was thick. Then her voice colder now. What do you want, Natalie? An apology? Fine. I apologize. I'm sorry we didn't include you properly. I'm sorry your feelings were hurt. Now, can we please move forward and make this work? You're apologizing because you need something from me. Not because you recognize what you did wrong. Those are very different things. Diane's tone shifted again, sharpening. I don't appreciate being psychoanalyzed. I'm trying to find a solution here. The solution is simple. Plan a different trip. Choose a different villa. Make your own reservation. I'm not transferring mine. That villa is perfect. I've shown everyone photos. They have their hearts set on it. Then perhaps you should have secured it before building expectations. Natalie, be serious. The deposit alone was 15,000 euros. We can't afford to just throw that away and start over. You should have thought of that before you removed me from the guest list. This is absurd. You're holding a family vacation hostage over hurt feelings. I'm not holding anything hostage. I'm exercising my right to decline funding a vacation I'm not welcome on. There's a difference. Graham said you were being unreasonable, but I didn't want to believe it. I defended you. I said you were just upset and needed time to calm down. But this is vindictive. Vindictive would be canceling the reservation entirely, taking my money and disappearing. I'm not doing that. I'm simply keeping what's mine. After everything we've done for you, everything we've welcomed you into this family, treated you like a daughter. I almost laughed. Almost. Everything you've done for me? Diane, in 15 years, you've never once invited me to lunch without needing something. You've never remembered my birthday without Graham reminding you. You've never asked about my work, my interests, my life. You've used my money, my time, my energy, and you've given nothing back except the occasional thank you when you remembered to. And you call that treating me like a daughter? How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth? Point out that I've given $68,000 to this family over the years? Money that was never repaid, never acknowledged, never appreciated? How dare I stop pretending that everything is fine when it's not? The line was quiet. Then very carefully Diane said, I think you need help, Natalie. Professional help. Perhaps you're having some kind of breakdown. This isn't like you. You're right. It's not like me. The old me would have apologized by now. Would have transferred the reservation and paid the balance and found a way to make everyone else comfortable. But I'm not that person anymore. What changed? You erased me from a trip I planned and paid for. You replaced me with strangers. And my husband said nothing. That changed me. Diane's voice turned to ice. If you don't transfer that reservation, you'll regret it. Is that a threat? It's a fact. You're destroying your marriage over a vacation. You're choosing pride over family. I'm choosing self-respect over being used. There's a difference. I heard voices in the background. Richard asking what was happening. Diane covered the phone, her muffled response sharp and frustrated. Then she was back. We'll discuss this later when you've calmed down. There's nothing to discuss. The reservation stays in my name. I'm not paying the final balance. If you want to go to Italy, book your own trip. And Diane? I think it's best if we don't speak for a while. You need time to think about what you're throwing away. I've thought about it. I'm throwing away 15 years of being invisible. That seems like a good start. I ended the call before she could respond, set my phone on the bed and stared at it like it was a foreign object. My hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline coursing through me. I'd just drawn a line. A clear, unmistakable line. And I'd done it without yelling, without crying, without softening it with apologies or maybes. I'd simply stated what was true and what I would not do. It felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. My phone immediately started buzzing again. Diane calling back. I declined it. She called 3 more times. Each one declined. Then texts started arriving. From Diane. From Vanessa. From Marcus, surprisingly. All variations of the same theme. You're being unreasonable. Think of the family. This isn't like you. Let's talk this through. You're hurting people who love you. I turned my phone to silent and opened my laptop. The Asheville apartment had responded. They wanted to schedule a virtual tour. I replied immediately, suggesting that afternoon. Yes, I typed. I'm very interested. I'm relocating for personal reasons. I need something available as soon as possible, preferably within the week. The response came quickly. We can arrange that. Let's talk at 2. I confirmed and closed the laptop. Looked around the hotel room with its beige walls and generic furniture. This wasn't home. Portland wasn't home. The Pearl District duplex I shared with Graham wasn't home. Home was supposed to be where people knew you, saw you, valued you. I'd been homeless for 15 years and hadn't realized it. I showered, letting the hot water wash away the night and the phone call and the accumulated weight of years. Dressed in clean clothes from my suitcase. Jeans and a soft sweater and the boots I'd packed. Looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I also looked present, like I'd been out of focus before and was finally sharpening into clarity. My phone showed 32 unread messages now. I didn't open them. Instead, I went down to the hotel lobby and sat in a corner with my laptop. Ordered more coffee. Opened my work email and began composing messages. To my manager, requesting to switch to fully remote status effective immediately. Citing personal circumstances and the need for flexibility. To HR, updating my address to the hotel temporarily. Requesting my W-2B sent electronically. To colleagues on various projects, letting them know I'd be working different hours for a while but would remain available. The responses came quickly. Everyone understanding, professional. No questions asked. Then I opened my personal email and started the harder communications. To the USPS, filing a change of address. From the Pearl District duplex to general delivery, Asheville, North Carolina. Temporary for now, but a start. To my bank, requesting all statements be sent electronically only. To my credit card companies, updating contact information. To every utility and service still in my name, transferring or canceling. Each click felt like cutting a tether. Each confirmation email a step toward freedom. At 1 my phone rang. Graham this time. I considered not answering, then decided I owed him one more conversation. Hello. Nat, where are you? Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm at a hotel. Downtown. My mother called me. She's very upset. She said you refused to transfer the villa and hung up on her. I didn't hang up. I ended the conversation when it was finished. That's not what she said. I'm sure it's not. There was a long pause. Nat, what are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish here? I'm setting boundaries. I'm claiming what's mine. I'm stopping the pattern. What pattern? The pattern where I give and your family takes and nothing ever changes. Where I'm useful until I'm not. Where I'm included until I'm in the way. His voice was tight. You're punishing them because you're angry at me. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply refusing to fund my own erasure. That's dramatic. Is it? You stood there and watched them remove me from a trip I planned. You didn't say a word. What would you call that? I didn't know what to say. I was caught off guard. You had days to say something. Your mother didn't plan that trip overnight. She coordinated with everyone. At any point you could have mentioned me. At any point you could have asked if I'd be okay with being cut. But you didn't. Because it was easier not to. That's not fair. I was trying to keep the peace. By sacrificing me? That's not keeping the peace, Graham. That's choosing sides. And you chose them. What do you want me to do? I want you to understand that your family has treated me like I'm disposable. I want you to acknowledge that you've let it happen. I want you to choose me for once. For once. I've always chosen you. We're married. Marriage is the choice. No. Marriage is a contract. Choosing me would mean defending me, protecting me, prioritizing me. When have you ever done that? He was quiet. I'm trying now. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're trying to smooth things over so your family can have their trip. You're trying to manage me back into compliance. That's not the same as choosing me. Natalie, please. Just come home. We can work this out. I don't want to come home. Home to what? To a marriage where I'm always second? To a life where your mother can call me at midnight because her dishwasher is leaking and I'm expected to solve it? To holidays where I cook for 12 people and no one thinks to ask if I need help? I'm tired, Graham. I'm so tired of being the one who bends while everyone else stays rigid. Then what do you want? Do you want a divorce? Is that what this is? I don't know what I want yet. I just know what I don't want anymore. I don't want to be invisible. I don't want to be taken for granted. I don't want to fund your family's lifestyle while being excluded from it. Those are things I'm certain about. Everything else I'm still figuring out. His breathing was heavy on the other end. My family thinks you're having some kind of crisis, that you're not thinking clearly. Of course they do. It's easier to believe I'm unstable than to acknowledge they've treated me poorly. That's not what I said. But it's what you're implying. Graham, I've never been more clear-headed in my life. That's what scares me. The virtual tour is at 2, I said, changing the subject. Virtual tour of what? An apartment. In Asheville. You're moving to North Carolina? I'm considering it. You can't just leave. Watch me. Natalie, stop. Just stop for a second and think about what you're doing. You're throwing away 15 years over one argument. One incident. It's not one incident. It's 15 years of incidents. This is just the one that finally made me see the pattern. I heard him moving, the sound of a door closing. He'd gone somewhere private. His office probably. Listen to me. I love you. I know I haven't been perfect. I know my family can be demanding. But we can fix this. We can set better boundaries. We can go to counseling. We can figure it out together. Can we? Because right now, it feels like you want me to apologize to your mother so she can have her trip. It feels like you want me to shrink back down to the size that was comfortable for everyone else. I want you to come home. Those aren't the same thing. What do you want me to say? That you're right? Fine. You're right. My family should have included you. I should have said something. I'm sorry. Is that what you need to hear? I need you to mean it. Not just say it because I'm holding something you want. I do mean it. Then prove it. Tell your mother the trip isn't happening unless she genuinely apologizes. Tell her that I'm your wife and I come first. Tell her that the way she's treated me is unacceptable. Tell Marcus he needs to repay the $5,000. Tell Vanessa she can't use me as free childcare anymore. Set actual boundaries and enforce them. He was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then his voice small, I can't do that. Why not? Because they're my family. I would lose them. And I'm your wife. Are you willing to lose me? Another long silence. Then almost a whisper, I don't know how to choose. That's your answer right there. When someone doesn't know how to choose you, they've already chosen. I have to go. My apartment tour is in 20 minutes. Nat, wait. There's nothing else to say right now. I need space. I need time. And I need you to really think about what kind of marriage you want. Because the one we've had isn't working for me anymore. Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything except taking care of myself. Something I should have done years ago. I ended the call before he could respond. My hands were trembling again, but this time it wasn't adrenaline. It was grief. Grief for the marriage I'd thought I had. Grief for the man I believed Graham was. Grief for 15 years spent building something that had never been as solid as I believed. I closed my eyes and breathed through it. Let myself feel it without trying to fix it or push it away. This was necessary pain. The kind that comes with growth. The kind that meant something was finally changing. At 2, I logged into the virtual tour. The leasing agent was a woman named Patricia with kind eyes and a warm southern accent. She walked me through the loft on her phone camera. Exposed brick walls and tall windows that let in floods of light. Original hardwood floors worn smooth by decades of footsteps. A galley kitchen with updated appliances. A bedroom with a view of the river. It's not fancy, Patricia said, but it's got good bones. The building used to be a textile mill back in the day. Now it's all artists and writers and people looking for something real. Something real. That resonated. I'll take it, I said. You don't want to see it in person first? Most folks like to walk through before they commit. I trust what I'm seeing. And I need to move quickly. When could I have it? Well, let's see. Patricia shuffled some papers off camera. Previous tenant moved out last week. We've cleaned it and done the inspection. I could have you in there by Friday if your application clears. My application will clear. I have excellent credit. References. Steady employment. I need this, Patricia. I heard something in my voice that surprised me. Desperation, maybe. Or determination. Patricia's expression softened. You running from something or running to something? Both, I said honestly. She nodded like she understood. I'll expedite the application. Call you by tomorrow morning with an answer. Thank you. And honey, whatever you're going through, Asheville's a good place to land. People here let you be who you need to be. That's exactly what I need. After the tour ended, I sat in the hotel lobby for a long time, watching people come and go. Businessmen with rolling luggage. Couples holding hands. A woman my age sitting alone with a book, completely content in her solitude. I wondered what her story was. If she'd chosen to be alone or if loneliness had chosen her. If there was even a difference. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Natalie, I don't know what's going on with you, but you're really hurting people who care about you. Mom is in tears. Graham is a mess. This isn't like you. Maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist or something. I stared at the message. The presumption of it. The audacity. I typed back carefully. Vanessa, I appreciate your concern, but the person I need to talk to is myself. I need to figure out why I've spent 15 years accepting treatment that I wouldn't tolerate from a stranger. Why I've funded your life while being treated like I don't matter. Why I've made myself small to make room for all of you. That's the conversation I'm having now. Her response came immediately. Wow, I was trying to help and you attacked me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're not yourself. I replied once more. I'm more myself than I've been in years. That's what you can't handle. Then I blocked her number. Blocked Diane's. Blocked Marcus's. Left only Graham unblocked, and only because legally and practically we still had things to untangle. But the rest of them, the chorus of voices telling me I was wrong, that I was overreacting, that I was damaged, they could exist without my participation. I didn't need their narrative anymore. That evening I ordered takeout and ate it alone in my hotel room. Thai food from a place down the street. The kind of spicy that made my eyes water. I ate slowly, mindfully, tasting every bite. When had I last done that? When had I last eaten a meal without simultaneously answering emails or planning something or thinking about who needed what from me? I couldn't remember. After dinner, I opened my laptop and did something I'd been avoiding. I looked at my own social media. The careful curation of my life with Graham. Photos from vacations that looked happy. Pictures from family gatherings where I was always slightly to the side, always in the background. Posts about achievements that got polite likes but few comments. My digital footprint was that of someone who existed in relation to others. Graham's wife. The Porter family member. The woman who organized things. There was almost nothing there that was just me. My interests. My thoughts. My life independent of the role I'd been playing. I scrolled back through years of posts, looking for myself, finding only reflections of what others wanted me to be. Then I did something impulsive. I created a new account. Not connected to Graham or his family. Not using my married name. Just my first name and a random number. The profile picture was a photo I'd taken weeks ago of a sunset over Portland. No people. Just color and light. I didn't add anyone. Didn't import contacts. Just left it blank. A fresh space. A place where I could exist without context or history. I stared at the empty profile for a long time. Then I typed a single post. What happens when you stop giving? No hashtags. No tags. No explanation. Just the question that had been burning in my chest since Memorial Day. I hit post and closed the laptop. Felt like releasing something. Like opening a valve that had been building pressure for years. My phone rang. Graham again. I let it go to voicemail. He called back. And again. On the fourth call I answered. What, Graham? Did you block my family? Did you seriously block my mother? I did. Why would you do that? Because I don't want to hear from them right now. I don't want their calls or their texts or their opinions about what I should do. I need silence from them. That's incredibly disrespectful. More disrespectful than replacing me on a trip I planned? More disrespectful than treating me like an ATM for 15 years? I don't think so. My mother is devastated. Good. Maybe devastation will lead to reflection. You're being cruel. I'm being clear. There's a difference. Your family has had access to me whenever they wanted, however they wanted for 15 years. They've taken that access for granted. Now they don't have it. That's not cruelty. That's a boundary. Graham's voice rose. You can't just cut people off like this. These are relationships. These are connections. We're family. Are we? Because family doesn't treat each other the way I've been treated. Family doesn't erase each other. Family doesn't take without ever giving back. What you're describing isn't family. It's a hierarchy where I'm at the bottom. That's not true. Isn't it? Name one time in the last 5 years where your family did something for me that I didn't do for them first. One time where they initiated care or support or even basic consideration. He was quiet. Exactly. You can't. Because it hasn't happened. So forgive me if I don't consider us family in any meaningful sense of the word. What do you want from me? His voice cracked. What do I have to do? I need you to sit with this. I need you to really think about how your family has treated me and how you've enabled it. I need you to decide if you're capable of choosing me over their comfort. And I need time to figure out if I even want to stay in a marriage where I have to ask to be chosen. How much time? I don't know. Patricia called the next morning, while I was finishing my coffee in the hotel room. Honey, you got approved. The place is yours if you want it. When can you move in? Friday, she said. I can have the keys ready by noon. I'll be there. I hung up and sat very still. This was real. I was actually leaving. Leaving Portland. Leaving the duplex. Leaving Graham. Not maybe or probably. Actually leaving. The weight of it settled over me. Heavy and light at the same time. Heavy with the enormity of the decision. Light with the promise of freedom. I started making lists. What to pack. What to ship. What to leave behind. Most of the furniture could stay. It was stuff Graham and I had chosen together. Compromises and combined aesthetics that had never felt fully mine. I'd start fresh in Asheville. By things I actually liked. Build a space that reflected who I was becoming. Not who I'd been. I called a moving company. Explained I needed a small move cross-country. Just personal items. Clothes and books and a few pieces. They could pick up Friday morning from the hotel. Have it delivered to Asheville by Monday. I booked a one-way flight for Friday afternoon. Portland to Charlotte with a connection. I'd rent a car in Asheville. Start figuring out my new city. Then I did the hardest thing. I texted Graham. I'm moving to Asheville. Friday. I'll arrange to pick up my things from the duplex. We can discuss next steps when I'm settled. His response was immediate. No. Absolutely not. You can't just leave. We're married. We have a life here. We need to talk about this in person. I don't want to talk in person right now. Every time we talk, you try to convince me I'm wrong. That I'm overreacting. That I should come back and smooth things over. I need space from that. Space from you and your family and all the ways you've made me feel small. This is insane. You're throwing everything away. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm reclaiming what I've lost. There's a difference. Please, just come home. Let's sit down together. Let's figure this out like adults. I am being an adult. I'm making a decision about my life and my future. A decision that prioritizes my well-being over everyone else's comfort. That's the most adult thing I've done in years. If you leave, that's it. That's what? Is that a threat? I'm saying if you go to North Carolina, I can't guarantee our marriage will survive this. Our marriage is already not surviving, Graham. That's why I'm leaving. To figure out if there's anything worth saving. And if not, then we'll deal with that when the time comes. But right now I need distance. I need perspective. I need to remember who I am when I'm not constantly being diminished. I'm not diminishing you. You're not defending me either. And in a marriage, silence is a choice. You've chosen your family over me repeatedly. Now I'm choosing myself. That's the consequence. His next message took longer to arrive. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it, Graham. Not right now. You can only decide who you want to be. What kind of husband you want to be. What kind of man you want to be. And I can't be there while you figure that out. I need to figure out who I am too. The rest of the week passed in a blur of logistics and quiet determination. I worked from the hotel room. My design projects a welcome distraction. My manager had approved the remote status without question. Good designers are hard to find, she'd said. We don't care where you work as long as the work is excellent. And mine was. I'd always been good at my job. It was one of the few places I felt competent and valued. I packed methodically, clothes folded with care, books stacked in boxes the hotel let me borrow, my laptop and hard drives, the few photos I wanted to keep, the leather journal I'd never written in, a small box of jewelry, nothing expensive but meaningful, my grandmother's wedding ring, earrings my mother had worn, things that connected me to people who'd loved me unconditionally. The movers came Friday morning. 2 efficient men who loaded everything into their truck in under an hour. My entire life in Portland fit into a small corner of their cargo space. It should have felt sad. Instead, it felt liberating. I checked out of the hotel at 10. Drove to the Pearl District one last time. Parked across the street from the duplex and just looked at it. The building where I'd lived for 7 years. Where I believed I was building a home. Where I'd slowly, imperceptibly lost myself. Graham's car wasn't there. He'd texted that morning saying he'd be out, that he couldn't watch me pack, that it hurt too much. I used my key and walked through rooms that felt foreign now. Evidence of our life together everywhere. His jacket on the hook. My coffee mug in the sink. The couch where we'd spent countless evenings. Him on his laptop, me on mine. Existing in parallel rather than together. I collected the last few things I wanted. Photos from my parents. A cookbook they'd given me. The pashmina my mother had worn to my wedding. Small things that mattered. I left my key on the kitchen counter. Beside it I placed my wedding ring. Not dramatically. Not as a statement. Just as a fact. I wasn't ready to wear it anymore. Wasn't ready to carry the weight of a promise that felt increasingly hollow. On my way out I paused in the doorway. Looked back one last time. This had been my life. These rooms had contained my routine, my compromises, my slow erasure. Leaving them felt like shedding skin. Painful but necessary. I closed the door quietly and walked to my car. The flight was smooth. I watched Portland disappear beneath clouds. The city growing smaller until it was just a pattern of grids and green. Then nothing. Just sky and space and the knowledge that I was moving toward something unknown. Charlotte was humid when I landed. The airport crowded and loud. I collected my rental car and started the drive to Asheville. 2 hours through mountains that rose like promises. The landscape changed as I climbed. Flatter land giving way to ridges and valleys. Towns with names I'd never heard. Signs for apple orchards and craft breweries and scenic overlooks. Asheville appeared suddenly as I crested a hill. A small city cradled by mountains, the French Broad River cutting through its heart. I followed the GPS to the River Arts District, the voice calmly directing me through unfamiliar streets. The loft building was exactly as Patricia had shown me. Red brick and tall windows. A faded sign on the side that read Riverside Textiles, a ghost from its industrial past. I parked and sat in the car for a moment. This was it. My new home. My fresh start. My chance to rebuild from the ground up. Patricia met me in the lobby with a bright smile and a set of keys. Welcome home, honey. How was the drive? Beautiful. Overwhelming. Perfect. She laughed. That sounds about right. Come on. Let me show you around the building. There's a community garden out back if you're into that. Coffee shop 2 blocks down that makes the best lattes you've ever had. Farmers market on Saturdays. Good folks around here. You'll fit right in. We took the stairs to the 3rd floor. Patricia unlocked the door and stepped aside. I walked into the loft and immediately felt something shift. The afternoon light poured through those tall windows, golden and warm. The space was empty, but it didn't feel hollow. It felt possible. This is where you start over, I thought. This is where you remember who you are. Patricia handed me the keys. It's all yours. Rent's due on the 1st. Maintenance requests go through the portal. Any questions, you call me directly. I took the keys and felt their weight in my palm. Thank you. For what, honey? For making this easy. For not asking questions. She smiled. Sometimes people need a soft place to land. Asheville's good at that. You take care of yourself, Natalie. You hear me? I will. After Patricia left, I walked through the empty loft slowly. Touched the brick walls, cool and solid. Stood at the windows and watched the river move below, constant and indifferent. Sat on the floor in what would be my bedroom and let myself feel everything. The fear, the grief, the anger, the hope, all of it washing through me like a storm. I pulled out my phone, opened the new social media account I'd created. The post I'd made, "What happens when you stop giving," had 3 comments. 3 strangers who'd somehow found it in the vastness of the internet. One said, "You start living." Another said, "You remember you're a person, not a resource." The third was longer. "I stopped giving last year. Left a family that treated me like a bank. It was the hardest and best thing I ever did." "You're not alone." I stared at those words. You're not alone. I'd felt alone for so long. Even surrounded by Graham and his family, I'd been profoundly isolated. But maybe I didn't have to be anymore. Maybe there were others out there who understood, who'd walked this path, who'd chosen themselves and survived. I typed a reply. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." Then I stood up, dusted off my jeans and walked to the window. Asheville spread out before me. A city I didn't know, full of people I'd never met, holding possibilities I couldn't yet imagine. Behind me, Portland felt impossibly far away. Graham and his family and the villa they still thought they'd have. All of it receding like tide, leaving me here. Alone but not lonely. Afraid but not paralyzed. Starting over with nothing but myself and the hard-won knowledge that sometimes, the only way forward is to walk away. The sun was setting, painting the river gold and rose. I watched until the light faded and the city lights began to flicker on, one by one like stars coming out. Then I sat down on the floor with my laptop and began to write. What I wrote that first night in Asheville wasn't polished or planned. It poured out of me like something that had been dammed up for years, finally breaking through. I wrote about the villa, about Memorial Day, about 15 years of small erasures that had accumulated into complete invisibility. I wrote about the spreadsheet with $68,000 on it, about Graham's silence when his family announced I'd been replaced, about Diane's non-apology apology, about learning that love without respect is just exploitation with better marketing. I didn't intend to share it anywhere. It was just for me, a way to process, a way to see my own story from the outside and recognize it for what it was. But when I finished, somewhere around midnight, I found myself copying it into that anonymous social media account. The one with no followers, no connections, just me and that single question I'd posted days before. I added a title, "The Villa I'll Never Visit." Then I hit post and closed my laptop, too exhausted to think about consequences. Sleep came easier than it had in weeks. The loft was empty and echoed with every small sound, but something about that emptiness felt clean, honest. In the morning, light streamed through those tall windows and painted stripes across the hardwood floor. I woke without an alarm for the first time in memory. No schedule to keep. No one expecting anything. Just silence and sunlight and the distant sound of the river. I made coffee using the cheap maker I'd picked up at a grocery store the night before. Sat on the floor by the window and watched Asheville wake up. Joggers on the riverside path. A man walking 3 dogs. A woman doing yoga on her apartment balcony across the street. People living their lives unaware of me, unburdened by me. My phone showed 2 missed calls from Graham and a text. "We need to talk about the villa situation. Mom is getting desperate. The final payment is due in 3 weeks." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop to check work emails and saw something strange. Notifications. Dozens of them. Hundreds. My anonymous post had somehow been found. Shared. The comment section was filling with people telling their own stories. About families who'd used them. Marriages where they'd been taken for granted. Years of giving that had never been reciprocated. I read through them slowly, my coffee growing cold. Each story was different in its details but identical in its shape. People who'd been told they were family while being treated like resources. People who'd finally said no and been called selfish. People who'd walked away and were still questioning if they'd done the right thing. One comment stood out. Posted by someone named Jennifer with a blank profile picture. I could have written this word for word. Except mine was my husband's friends, not his family. I planned a group trip to Costa Rica for his 40th birthday. Put down deposits. Coordinated everything. Then his best friend decided his new girlfriend should come instead of me. Not enough space, they said. My husband went without me. I filed for divorce 3 weeks later. Best decision I ever made. I typed a reply. How long did it take before you stopped questioning yourself? Her response came within minutes. About 6 months. Then I woke up one day and realized I hadn't thought about them in weeks. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. The anger fades. The peace stays. The anger fades. The peace stays. I repeated it to myself like a mantra. Over the next few days, my routine found its rhythm. Mornings with coffee and light. Work calls where I was competent and valued. Afternoons exploring Asheville. I found the coffee shop Patricia had mentioned. High Five Coffee, tucked into a converted garage with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. The barista, a woman with purple hair and kind eyes, learned my order by the third visit. Oat milk latte extra shot. I started going there every afternoon, bringing my laptop, working in a corner while conversations hummed around me. No one knew me. No one expected anything. It was glorious. I discovered the farmers market on Saturday. Rows of vendors selling vegetables and honey and handmade soap. Sourdough from a baker who told me about his starter like it was a beloved pet. I bought a small ceramic bowl from a potter, turquoise glaze with a crackled finish. My first purchase for the loft. Something beautiful and impractical and entirely mine. The apartment slowly filled with pieces I chose. A small table from a thrift store. Chairs that didn't match but felt right. Plants on the windowsill, basil and rosemary that caught the morning light. I hung curtains I'd found at a textile shop. Soft linen in a color called oyster that made the whole space feel calm. One afternoon, walking back from the market, I passed the Asheville Humane Society. A sign out front said adoption event today. I hadn't planned to go in. Hadn't thought about getting a pet. But something pulled me through those doors anyway. The dogs were in kennels in the back. Some barking. Some sleeping. Some pressing their noses through the chain link, desperate for attention. And then I saw him. A golden retriever mix, maybe 3 years old, with a torn ear and eyes that had seen some rough days. The card on his kennel said his name was Copper. That he'd been surrendered when his family moved and couldn't take him. That he was good with people but shy at first. Took time to trust. I know the feeling, I said quietly. Copper looked at me. Didn't bark or jump. Just looked. The volunteer appeared beside me. You want to meet him? He's a sweet boy. Just needs someone patient. I met him in the play yard. He sat at a distance at first, watching me. I sat on the ground and waited. After a few minutes he approached. Sniffed my hand. Let me scratch behind that torn ear. When I stood to leave, he followed me to the gate and whined softly. The volunteer smiled. Think he likes you. I filled out the adoption papers that afternoon. Brought Copper home the next day. He explored the loft cautiously, sniffing every corner, checking every room. Then he settled on the floor by the window, in a patch of sunlight, and fell asleep. Just like that, my empty apartment had a heartbeat. Someone who needed me but didn't use me. Who gave affection freely without keeping score. Who'd been abandoned too and understood the shape of starting over. Work continued smoothly. My projects were well received. My manager praised my recent designs. No one cared that I was in North Carolina instead of Oregon. No one even asked why I'd moved. I was judged only by my output, my skill, my reliability in the ways that actually mattered. It was refreshing. Validating. A reminder that I had value beyond what I could do for the Porter family. 3 weeks after I'd arrived in Asheville, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello? Natalie? It's Patricia. From the leasing office. Oh hi. Is everything okay with the apartment? Everything's fine, honey. I'm actually calling about something else. You remember you put me down as a reference on your application? I did. Well, someone called asking about you. Wanted to know if you really lived here. If I'd seen you. How long your lease was for. My stomach dropped. Who called? Woman named Diane. Said she was your mother-in-law. Seemed real concerned about you. Said the family was worried. I didn't tell her anything, Patricia continued quickly. Told her I don't discuss tenant information. But I wanted to give you a heads up. She sounded pretty determined. Thank you for not telling her anything. Of course not. That's your business, not hers. You okay though? You need anything? I'm okay. Just dealing with some family stuff. Family stuff that required moving across the country. Patricia's tone was gentle but knowing. Sometimes that's what it takes. You just let me know if anyone else comes around asking questions. I've got your back. After we hung up, I sat very still. Diane had tracked me down. Or tried to. The realization sent ice through my veins. She was that desperate. That unwilling to accept boundaries. That convinced of her right to access me. My phone buzzed. A text from Graham. Mom hired a private investigator. She found out you're in Asheville. This has gone too far, Nat. She's panicking about the villa. The final payment is due in 4 days. If you don't transfer the reservation and pay the balance, we'll lose everything. Please. I'm begging you. Just do this one thing and then we can talk about everything else. I stared at the message for a long time. This one thing. As if it were a small favor. As if it weren't the culmination of everything wrong with our relationship and his family. As if paying 22,000 euros for a vacation I wasn't invited to was reasonable. I typed back slowly. Your mother hired a private investigator to find me. Do you understand how invasive that is? How controlling? This is exactly why I left. This is why I need space. I'm not transferring anything. I'm not paying anything. The villa reservation will expire. They'll lose the deposit I paid. That's the consequence of their choices. His response was immediate. You're punishing all of us because you're angry. That deposit was 15,000 euros. You're just going to let it disappear? Yes, because it was my money. My gift. And they showed me it meant nothing to them. So now it means nothing to me either. You're being vindictive. I'm being done. There's a difference. Graham, your mother hired someone to track me down. She's escalated this to a point that's frankly scary. I need you to tell her to back off, to respect my boundaries, to accept that no means no. Or what? Or I'll get a lawyer involved. A restraining order if I have to. I'm not kidding. This stops now. The phone rang seconds later. Graham, his voice tight with panic. You can't be serious. A restraining order against my mother? She's just worried about you. She's not worried about me. She's worried about her vacation. There's a difference. Natalie, please. Just think about this logically. 15,000 euros is a lot of money to just throw away. You worked hard for that money. I did. And I chose to spend it on a gift. A gift that was rejected. So now I'm choosing to let it go. You can let go of money that easily? It's not easy. But it's necessary. I need your family to understand that I'm not available to be used anymore. That I'm not a problem they can solve or a resource they can access. I'm a person who said no. And that no has consequences. What about us? What about our marriage? I don't know, Graham. What about it? I'm trying here. I've been thinking about what you said. About choosing you. About boundaries. Trying isn't enough. I need to see actual change. I need to see you tell your mother to stop. To respect my decision. To accept that the trip isn't happening. Have you done that? There was a long pause. I'm working on it. That's not the same as doing it. I know. His voice was small. I know it's not. But they're my family. I keep coming back to that. How do I choose between you and them? You don't choose between us. You choose what kind of person you want to be. What kind of husband? What kind of son? Right now you're choosing to enable them. To make their feelings more important than mine. To ask me to sacrifice myself so they can be comfortable. That's a choice. It's just not one I can live with anymore. So what happens now? Now we wait. You figure out who you want to be. I figure out who I am without you. And in a few days, the villa reservation expires and your family learns that actions have consequences. And if they lose the deposit, then they lose it. That's not my problem anymore. Graham. My voice softened slightly. I didn't want this. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to hurt anyone. But I can't keep hurting myself to spare other people discomfort. At some point I have to choose me, even if no one else does. The call ended quietly. No yelling. No ultimatums. Just the truth, plain and unavoidable. I set my phone down and looked around the loft. At the mismatched furniture and thrift store finds. At Copper sleeping in his patch of sunlight. At the plants growing on the windowsill and the ceramic bowl on my small table. At the life I'd built in 3 weeks. Small and imperfect and entirely mine. 4 days later, the villa reservation expired. I received an automated email from Signora Rossi. Reservation canceled due to non-payment. Deposit forfeited per terms and conditions. I stared at the email. 15,000 euros. Gone. Money I'd earned and saved and spent with hope and care. Money that represented months of work. I waited for regret to come, for the sick feeling of waste. It didn't. Instead, I felt lighter. That money had been an investment in a family that didn't value me, in a marriage that wasn't balanced, in a version of myself I no longer wanted to be. Losing it wasn't waste. It was tuition. The cost of learning who I really was and what I really deserved. My phone stayed quiet for 2 days. Then finally a text from Graham. They know. About the villa. Mom is devastated. Dad is furious. Marcus thinks you've lost your mind. Vanessa is telling everyone you sabotaged a family trip out of spite. I sat with that for a moment. Let myself imagine the scene. Diane crying. Richard stern and disapproving. Marcus shaking his head. Vanessa spinning the narrative on her blog, painting me as the villain. The old me would have been crushed by that. Would have immediately wanted to defend myself. Explain. Apologize. Make it better. The new me, the one sitting in an Asheville loft with a rescue dog and a turquoise bowl and 3 weeks of peace under her belt, felt nothing but calm. I replied simply. I didn't sabotage anything. I declined to pay for a vacation I wasn't invited to. They sabotaged it when they erased me. The consequences are theirs to carry. What do you think? Graham asked. Do you think this was worth it? Blowing up our lives over a trip? I think it was worth it to discover I've been living a lie. That I've been a supporting character in someone else's story. That I've been funding a family that doesn't respect me and a marriage that doesn't protect me. So yes, it was worth it. Even if you lose me, even then. Because if losing you means I find myself, that's not actually a loss. That's an exchange. And for the first time in 15 years, I'm getting the better end of the deal. His response took an hour. I don't know how to come back from this. Maybe you don't. Maybe this is just where we are now. I left it at that. Didn't offer comfort or hope or a path forward. Just honesty. Raw and unadorned. The weeks that followed were quiet. I worked. Walked copper along the river. Made friends with the barista at High Five Coffee. Started going to a yoga class at a studio near my building. Bought a used bike and explored the neighborhoods. Gradually, Asheville became familiar. The mountains that surrounded the city. The way the light changed with the seasons. The people who nodded hello on the riverside path. I was building a life. Small and quiet and wholly my own. The blog post I'd written, the one about the villa, continued to circulate. People kept finding it. Kept commenting. Kept sharing their own stories of family dysfunction and financial exploitation, and the hard choice to walk away. Someone suggested I write more. So I did. I wrote about the spreadsheet. About $68,000 given without acknowledgement. About the myth of family loyalty when loyalty only flows one direction. About the difference between being loved and being useful. I wrote without anger. Just clarity. Each post felt like releasing something I'd been carrying. Each comment from strangers who understood felt like validation I'd never gotten from the people who were supposed to love me. One evening in late October, I was sitting at my table with copper at my feet when my phone rang. A Portland number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. Hello? Natalie? This is Richard. Graham's father. I froze. Richard had never called me directly in 15 years. Hello, Richard. I wanted to speak with you. About the situation. About what's happened with the family. Okay. There was a long pause. Then, his voice careful and measured. I owe you an apology. I said nothing. Waited. Diane has been, he continued slowly, very focused on the Italy trip. On what we lost. On feeling wronged. But I've been thinking about what Graham told me. About the money you've given us over the years. About how we've taken your help for granted. And I realize we've treated you poorly. That's an understatement, I said quietly. Yes, it is. I'm not going to make excuses. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. What we did. How we excluded you. How we used you. And I'm sorry. Why are you calling now? Because you deserve an apology. And because Graham is miserable. And because I think we might have lost you for good. And I'd like to prevent that if possible. I appreciate the apology, Richard. I do. But it doesn't change anything. Not right now. I understand. But I wanted you to know. For what it's worth. It's worth something. Just not enough yet. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness of the loft. Richard's apology had been real. I could hear it in his voice. The discomfort. The recognition. But one apology couldn't undo 15 years. Couldn't rebuild trust that had been systematically destroyed. Couldn't make me unsee what I'd finally seen clearly. November arrived with cooler air and leaves turning gold. I bought a coat at a consignment shop. Warm wool and deep green. Bought boots that could handle mountain trails. Started hiking on weekends, Copper trotting beside me. Both of us learning the paths together. The blog had grown. Not viral but steady. A few thousand followers. People who checked in regularly. Who shared their own stories. Who formed a strange digital community around the simple truth that walking away from toxicity was valid. Necessary. Brave. Someone asked if I'd ever go back to Portland. Back to Graham. I thought about it for a long time before answering. I don't know. Right now I'm focused on being here. On building a life that doesn't require me to be smaller than I am. On learning what I actually want instead of what everyone else needs from me. If Graham can change, if he can truly choose me and maintain that choice consistently, maybe there's a path forward. But that's his work to do. Not mine. I'm done doing work for other people. My phone showed a message from Graham occasionally. Updates about his family. Diane was in therapy, he said. Marcus had apologized via email. Vanessa had taken down some of her posts about me. Small changes. Baby steps. I acknowledged them but didn't engage. Didn't offer encouragement or praise. Just noted them and moved on. December brought the first snow. Light dustings that melted by afternoon. I decorated the loft simply. A small tree from the farmer's market. White lights in the windows. The ceramic bowl filled with pine cones Copper and I had collected on hikes. It was peaceful. On Christmas Eve I made myself dinner. Nothing fancy. Pasta and salad and a glass of wine. Sat at my table with Copper at my feet and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Contentment. Not happiness exactly. Just the quiet satisfaction of being exactly where I needed to be. My phone rang. Graham. I answered. Merry Christmas, Nat. Merry Christmas. I'm in Asheville. What? I'm here. At a hotel downtown. I flew in this morning. I couldn't spend Christmas knowing you were alone. Can I see you? My heart was pounding. You should have asked first. I know. I'm sorry. I needed to try. To show you I'm serious about choosing you. Please. Just coffee. That's all I'm asking. I looked around my loft. At the peace I'd built. At the life I'd created. At Copper watching me with those trusting eyes. Part of me wanted to say no. To protect this space. This freedom. But another part, a part that still remembered loving Graham, wanted to see if change was possible. Tomorrow, I finally said. 10 o'clock. High five coffee. Thank you, he breathed. Thank you, Nat. We met the next morning. He looked different. Thinner. Tired. Older somehow. We ordered our drinks and sat at a corner table. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. You look good, he finally said. Feel good. That's what I was afraid of. That you'd be better without me. I am better. But that doesn't mean there's no path forward. Just means the path has to be different. I know. I've been in therapy. Twice a week. Trying to understand how I enabled my family. How I failed you. That's good. It's hard. Seeing myself clearly. Seeing how I let them treat you. How I prioritize their comfort over your dignity. Yeah, it is. He reached across the table. Stopped short of touching my hand. I want to try again. If you'll let me. I want to be the husband you deserved from the beginning. I don't know if I can do this again, Graham. Don't know if I can trust that it won't go back to how it was. I can't promise it won't be hard. But I can promise I'll choose you. Every time. Even when it costs me. Especially then. We talked for 2 hours. About boundaries he'd set with his family. About the therapy he was doing. About the life he wanted to build if I'd give him another chance. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. I said maybe. Said we'd take it slow. Said he'd need to prove it through actions, not words. Said I wasn't coming back to Portland. If we did this, it would be here. On my terms. In my space. He agreed to everything. It's been 6 months since that Christmas coffee. Graham moved to Asheville in February. Got his own apartment across town. We see each other twice a week. Go hiking. Have dinners. Talk about hard things without hiding. It's different now. Tentative. Careful. But real in a way it never was before. His family is still working on accepting it. Diane sent a card in March. A real apology. Acknowledging what she'd done. Asking if we could start over slowly. I haven't responded yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. That's still my choice to make. The blog continues. I write when I feel moved to. Share pieces of this journey. The comments still come. Stories of people finding their own strength. Their own boundaries. Their own peace. I've learned that walking away isn't giving up. It's giving yourself a chance. That silence isn't emptiness. It's space for your own voice. That choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. The villa in Tuscany exists without me. Somewhere in Chianti, olive trees grow and sunsets paint the hills gold. Maybe someday I'll see it. Maybe I won't. It doesn't matter anymore. Because I've found something better than a perfect vacation. I found myself. And unlike that deposit, that's something no one can take away. Spring arrived in Asheville with an explosion of color I hadn't expected. Dogwoods blooming white and pink along every street. Azaleas bursting into flame across hillsides. The French Broad River running high and fast with snowmelt from the mountains. I'd been in North Carolina for nearly 8 months, and the city had stopped feeling new. Felt like home. The kind of home I'd never had in Portland, where every corner held expectations and obligations. Here I was just Natalie. Not Graham's wife. Not the Porter family problem solver. Just a woman with a dog and a loft and a life that belonged entirely to herself. The blog had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. What started as a single anonymous post had evolved into something larger. A space where people shared their stories of setting boundaries with family. Of walking away from toxic relationships. Of learning to value themselves after years of being devalued. The community that formed around those posts was fierce and supportive, full of people who understood what it meant to choose yourself when everyone else expected you to choose them. I'd revealed my identity in March, posting a photo of myself with copper on a mountain trail. My name. My face. My real story. The response had been overwhelming. Messages from hundreds of people thanking me for giving voice to experiences they'd thought were theirs alone. For validating the hard choice to leave. For showing that life on the other side of that choice could be beautiful. Some messages came from people still trapped in similar situations. Still funding family members who took without gratitude. Still swallowing hurt to keep peace. Still believing that if they just gave a little more, sacrificed a little harder, eventually they'd earn the love and respect they deserved. I answered those messages carefully, never telling people what to do but sharing what I'd learned. That you can't earn what should be freely given. That sacrifice without reciprocity isn't love, it's exploitation. That walking away isn't failure, it's wisdom. One message stood out. A woman named Teresa from Ohio who'd been supporting her adult children financially for years, while they criticized every aspect of her life. She'd finally stopped. Cut them off completely. And now 6 months later she was drowning in guilt. They're my children, she wrote. What kind of mother abandons her children? I sat with that message for a long time before responding. Wrote and deleted several drafts. Finally settled on this. You didn't abandon them. You stopped enabling them. Those are different things. A mother's love doesn't require financial martyrdom. It doesn't demand that you set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You're not responsible for their comfort at the cost of your survival. They're adults. Let them learn to stand on their own. And if they can't forgive you for that, then they were never loving you. They were using you. Teresa responded 3 days later. I printed your message and put it on my refrigerator. I read it every morning. It's the only thing that keeps me from calling them. Thank you for seeing me. For understanding. Those words, for seeing me, appeared again and again in the messages I received. People who'd spent years being invisible suddenly feeling witnessed. Validated. That simple recognition meant everything. Graham and I continued our careful dance. Twice weekly dinners that sometimes went well, and sometimes ended in difficult conversations about trust and hurt, and whether we could really rebuild what had been broken. He was trying. I could see that. He'd set boundaries with his family that cost him. Diane had stopped speaking to him for 3 weeks in February when he'd refused to pressure me about coming back to Portland. Marcus had uninvited him from a family investment opportunity because Graham wouldn't share my contact information. Vanessa had posted passive-aggressive stories about family loyalty that were clearly directed at him. He'd held firm through all of it, choosing me even when it hurt, even when it isolated him from the people he'd known his whole life. But trying wasn't the same as succeeding. There were still moments when his instinct was to defend them, to explain their behavior, to suggest that maybe I was being too harsh, holding on to hurt too long. Those moments showed me how deep the patterns ran, how much work remained. One evening in April, we were having dinner at a small Italian restaurant near the River Arts District. Copper was home, probably sprawled across the couch I'd finally bought. The conversation had been easy until Graham mentioned that Diane wanted to visit Asheville. "She wants to see you," he said, "to apologize in person. She's been working with her therapist on taking accountability." I set down my fork. "I'm not ready for that. She's really changed, Nat. She understands now what she did wrong." Understanding isn't the same as earning back trust. That takes time. How much time? I don't know. Maybe a lot. Maybe forever. That's not fair to her. I looked at him steadily. What's not fair is expecting me to accept an apology on her timeline instead of mine. What's not fair is prioritizing her feelings about being forgiven over my feelings about being hurt. I get to decide when I'm ready. If I'm ever ready. She's trying, Natalie. So she should keep trying. Without expecting immediate results. That's what real change looks like. Not performing growth to get what you want, but actually becoming different because you recognize you need to. He was quiet for a long moment. Then softly, "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm still doing it. Still trying to manage your feelings to make things easier for them. Old habits. They die hard. They do. But you're catching yourself. That matters. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? Honestly, I don't know. Forgiveness isn't something I owe them. It's something I'll give if and when it feels right. If it never does, that's okay too. I'm not carrying anger anymore. I'm just carrying boundaries." We finished dinner quietly. Walked along the river afterward, the spring evening soft and warm. Graham took my hand tentatively and I let him. This was the complexity of healing. It wasn't linear. It wasn't simple. Some days felt like progress. Others felt like we were right back where we started. But we were trying. Both of us. And maybe that was enough for now. In May, something unexpected happened. I received an email from a literary agent who'd been following the blog. She wanted to know if I'd ever considered writing a book. "Your voice resonates with so many people," she wrote. "There's a hunger for stories about setting boundaries, about reclaiming yourself from family systems that diminish you. I think you have something important to say. Have you thought about expanding your writing into a memoir?" I hadn't. The blog had been therapeutic, a way to process and connect. But a book felt different. More permanent. More exposed. I sat with the email for a week before responding. Asked questions. Talked to Graham about it, and surprisingly to Patricia, who'd become something of a friend. Both encouraged me. "You've already done the hard part," Patricia said over coffee at High Five. "You've told the truth. Now you're just telling it in a longer form." The agent connected me with a publisher. We had video calls. Discussed structure and audience and what story I wanted to tell. By June, I'd signed a contract. The advance wasn't huge, but it was enough to make the book my focus for the next year. Enough to validate that my experience, my voice, my story had value beyond just helping me heal. Could help others too. Writing the book was harder than I expected. Not the actual writing, but the excavation it required. Going back through emails and texts and bank statements. Reconstructing conversations and moments I tried to move past. Sitting with the hurt all over again. Not to wallow in it, but to understand it fully. To see the patterns clearly enough to name them. Graham was supportive but struggled with parts of it. Seeing himself on the page, his failures documented in careful detail, was painful for him. There were nights when he'd read a chapter and then need space. Need to sit with the man he'd been and the man he was trying to become. "I get why you need to write this," he said once, voice tight. But God, not seeing it all laid out like this. I was such a coward. You were human. You were raised in a system that taught you certain things. You're unlearning them. That's not easy. Do you hate me? For how I was? I don't hate you. I'm angry at what happened, at what was allowed to happen. But hate? No. I'm not sure I could be sitting here with you if I hated you. Summer brought tourists to Asheville. The streets crowded with visitors seeking mountain air and craft breweries, and the artistic vibe the city had cultivated. I mostly avoided downtown during peak times, preferring early morning hikes with Copper or evenings on my balcony watching the river. The book was taking shape. Chapters about the villa, about the $68,000, about the slow realization that I'd been funding my own erasure, about the decision to leave, about building a new life from nothing, about the ongoing complexity of reconciliation. My editor loved it. She pushed me to go deeper in places, to sit with the uncomfortable truths longer, to resist the urge to tie everything up neatly. Life isn't neat, she reminded me. Healing isn't linear. Your readers will appreciate the honesty. In August, Graham's lease was up. We'd been seeing each other for 8 months, making progress, having hard conversations, learning how to be different together. He asked if he could move in with me. Not back to how it was, he clarified quickly, but forward, building something new. I thought about it for a week, talked it through with my therapist, a woman named Dr. Chan who I'd started seeing in March. She asked good questions. What would it mean to have him in your space? What boundaries would need to be in place? What would happen if old patterns resurfaced? I came back to Graham with a list. If we do this, certain things need to be clear. We split expenses equally. We maintain separate bank accounts. Your family doesn't get a key. They don't drop by unannounced. If they visit, it's planned in advance and I have veto power. We continue couples therapy. And if at any point this stops working for me, I need you to respect that. Even if it means you move out again. He agreed to everything. Signed an actual written agreement we drafted together. Not because we didn't trust each other, but because we'd learned that clarity prevented resentment. He moved in September 1st. We rearranged the loft together, making space for his things without losing what I'd built. His books on my shelves, his coffee mugs in my kitchen, his clothes in the closet that now belonged to both of us. Felt strange at first, nerve-wracking. I kept waiting for something to break, for old patterns to reassert themselves, for him to start prioritizing his family's needs over our boundaries. But weeks passed and he held the line. When Diane called asking for money for a new roof, he said no and offered to help her apply for a home equity loan instead. When Marcus suggested a family reunion in Portland, Graham declined and suggested they plan something in a neutral location instead. When Vanessa asked him to watch the kids so she could attend a blogging conference, he told her to hire a babysitter. Small moments, small stands, but they added up to something that felt like actual change. October brought my favorite kind of weather. Cool mornings and warm afternoons. Leaves turning brilliant colors on the mountains. Copper and I hiked almost every weekend, sometimes with Graham, sometimes alone. The book was nearly finished. Just the final chapters left. The ones about now. About the uncertainty of reconciliation. About learning to trust again after trust had been shattered. About the reality that some relationships, even when salvaged, would never be what they were before. And why that was okay. Why different could be better. My editor had scheduled the book for spring release. Cover design was underway. Marketing plans being discussed. There would be interviews, podcast appearances, book events. The thought terrified and excited me in equal measure. This story that had been so private would soon be public. Available for judgment and criticism and connection. In November, a year after I'd left Portland, Diane asked if she could visit. Graham brought it up gently over breakfast. She's been asking for months. She's been in therapy. She's written you letters. She wants to make amends. I'm not saying you have to say yes. Just that she's asking. I drank my coffee slowly. Thought about it. About whether I was ready. About what it would mean to let her into this space I'd built. Finally I said okay. One day. Lunch in a public place. And you're there. I need a buffer. He nodded. Thank you. For being willing to try. I'm not promising anything beyond lunch. I know. That's enough. Diane arrived on a gray Saturday in late November. We met at a restaurant downtown. She looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. The confidence I'd always associated with her had dimmed into something more tentative. We exchanged awkward hellos, sat down, ordered food none of us really wanted. Diane spoke first, her voice careful. "Natalie, I owe you an enormous apology. What we did as a family was inexcusable. We treated you like you were there to serve us, like your value was in what you could provide rather than who you are. I took advantage of your generosity. I dismissed your feelings. I erased you from a trip you'd planned as a gift. And I didn't see it. I didn't see how terrible we were until you left." I listened without interrupting. She continued, "I've been in therapy for almost a year now, working on understanding why I behaved that way, why I felt entitled to your time and money and effort. My therapist has helped me see patterns I learned from my own parents, ways I was taught that family means having unconditional access to each other, that mothers-in-law are supposed to be in charge, that daughters-in-law are supposed to accommodate. I'm not making excuses, just trying to understand so I can be different." "What does different look like?" I asked. "Different looks like respecting your boundaries without resentment. Like not expecting you to solve my problems or fund my lifestyle. Like appreciating what you've given instead of expecting more. Like treating you as an equal member of this family instead of an auxiliary to my son. It looks like earning back your trust instead of demanding it." "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Of course. When you hired the private investigator to find me, what were you thinking?" Her face crumpled slightly. "I was panicking. The villa was slipping away. I told everyone about the trip. I felt humiliated. And I thought if I could just talk to you, just explain, you'd understand. You'd give in. I was still seeing you as someone I could manage. Someone whose boundaries were negotiable. I didn't understand that no meant no. That you had the right to walk away. I'm sorry for that, especially for violating your privacy, for trying to force access you'd clearly revoked." We sat with that for a moment. Then I spoke, choosing my words carefully. "I appreciate this apology. I can see you've done work. But I need you to understand something. We're not going back to how things were. I'm not going to be available the way I used to be. I'm not going to fund family emergencies or organize everyone's lives or say yes when I mean no. If we rebuild any kind of relationship, it will be different. Slower. With clear boundaries. And you'll need to be okay with that. Even if it's uncomfortable. Even if other people question it. I understand. And I respect that. Whatever relationship you're willing to have, on whatever terms, I'm grateful for." The lunch lasted 2 hours. We didn't solve everything. Didn't suddenly become close. But we started. Carefully. Honestly. With Graham there to hold space and intervene when things got tense. It wasn't reconciliation yet. Just the possibility of it. And that felt like enough. December marked 1 year since Graham had first come to Asheville. Since that Christmas coffee where we'd begun this tentative journey back toward each other. We celebrated quietly. Dinner at home. Copper sleeping by the fireplace I'd bought in October. The two of us on the couch talking about the year. About how far we'd come and how far we still had to go. The book would be out in April. I'd finished the final manuscript in early December. Sent it off with a mixture of pride and terror. That story, our story, would soon exist in the world. People would read it, judge it, connect with it, criticize it, and I'd have to be okay with that. With being visible in a way I'd spent 15 years avoiding. Graham held my hand. "Read the fear in my face. You're worried about the book. About what people will think." "I am. What if I'm wrong? What if I was too harsh? What if people think I'm vindictive or petty or dramatic?" "Then they think that. But the people who need this story, who are living versions of it right now, they'll see themselves. They'll feel less alone. That matters more than whether everyone likes you." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just learning to see you clearly. To recognize that your truth is valid, even when it makes people uncomfortable. Even when it makes me uncomfortable. That's growth." We sat in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that only exists between people who fought through the noise and found something real on the other side. The kind that isn't absence but presence. I thought about the villa. About that trip to Tuscany I'd never take. About the 15,000 euros I'd forfeited and the family gathering that never happened. About Diane crying over lost deposits and Richard's quiet disappointment, and Vanessa's social media rants about betrayal. About the year of chaos that decision had triggered. And I thought about what I'd gained. This loft. This city. This dog sleeping by the fire. This version of myself that knew her worth and refused to accept less. This relationship with Graham that was harder but realer than the marriage we'd had before. This community of people online who'd found strength in my story and shared their own. This book that would soon exist in the world, helping others find their way out of situations I knew too well. The trade was worth it. Every painful moment. Every hard conversation. Every loss. Worth it for this. For the peace of living authentically. For the freedom of having boundaries. For the quiet joy of a life that belonged completely to me. Spring would bring the book. Summer would bring whatever came next. Maybe full reconciliation with the Porters. Maybe permanent distance. Maybe something in between. I didn't know yet. Didn't need to know. For the first time in my adult life, I was comfortable with uncertainty. With letting things unfold without trying to control them. With trusting myself to handle whatever came. The villa still existed in Chianti. Probably hosting other families now. Other gatherings. Other people making memories in the Tuscan hills. I hope they appreciated it. Hope they understood what a gift it was to be together somewhere beautiful. Hope they didn't take each other for granted. But whether they did or didn't, it wasn't my concern anymore. I'd let go of that particular dream. And in doing so, I'd found something better. Not a destination, but a journey. Not a perfect vacation, but an imperfect, beautiful, hard-won life. As I sat there on that December evening, Kappa's steady breathing the only sound, Graham's presence solid beside me, I realized something. I didn't disappear when I left Portland. I arrived. Arrived at myself. At the truth of who I'd always been beneath the performance. At the strength I'd possessed all along but never claimed. The villa was never the point. The point was learning that I deserved a seat at the table. And if the table didn't have room for me, I deserved to walk away and build my own. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them